my basic plan is I want to talk with you about things that, I don't do a lot of these presentations. I mean, I've presented at book publishing conferences, but it's a very different sort of thing. So I want to talk about, thank you for bringing your No Starch bag. Did everyone get their No Starch t-shirt? I'm going to talk about things that we experience as book publishers, ways that I acquire, some things that I do when I edit books. I can go into more detail in any of those areas if people want. I'll talk with you about kind of the nature of the book, what I think about with book, like the book itself, what the thing is, and I think a lot about these issues. Can you all hear me? I have no idea. Is it fine? Okay. If there's anything, let me just make sure. Yes, I'm just going to talk about whatever. I'm very direct. You can ask me a direct question. Is my ass fat? Yes, it's fat. Oh my God! I'll give you a direct answer. So I'll talk about whatever you want. I can tell you how to roast coffee if you're bored. Not necessarily particularly well, but it's usually drinkable. So, and among one of my many obsessions. So, does that seem like a reasonable plan? I mean, I don't know what you all want to hear. I'll talk about also the challenges in publishing on moving targets, which is most open source software. We have to be really careful about stuff and how we address those challenges, and how I have addressed them over the years. I started No Starch in 1994. I've been in book publishing since 1987, and unlike many of my competition, I'm a book publisher, except that I happen to make very technical books. And if you've read my books over the years, in the early years, I used to pretty much rewrite them all, except for some of them. So a lot of times you're actually reading my writing, but my name is not on the cover, nor is my name on the company, because I'm not that kind of guy. I think of what I do as basically like good stage lighting. Why am I holding this cup of coffee? Actually, it's very comforting in a certain way, although it's not really good coffee, but it is kind of how I'm going to hold it again. So anyway, that's my company. The original logo used to be a goldfish in a water glass, but people thought we were a Christian book publisher, and I'm definitely not. I'm not Christian, and I'm definitely not a Christian book publisher, so we changed it eventually, although that was I chose that logo because it was meant to be in some weird way something that said, like, the company from the beginning was designed in my mind to make books that are accessible, that are always readable, and that all factors into the way that we develop books. So over lunch, I came up with this idea with the designer because we couldn't come up with anything. I said, well, let's use a glass of water, and this was my naivete, right? Because everyone has water, but everyone doesn't actually have water. But anyway, in my mind, it's like, oh, everyone has a glass of water because we were sitting in a restaurant. And then he said, put a fish in there so you know it's not wine. But anyway, it was an interesting but failed logo. So this is, a couple of JavaScript elements. We'll pretend those don't exist. But it's clever. It's fine. More people know the robot. If you know the coffee robot, we don't have a real name for it, just coffee robot. But that's that. So how do I work this? Let's try this. This is the name of my talk, and that's basically because I'll do anything to take away just a little bit of Donald Trump's thunder, but no one can really succeed there. There he is. Hello. What? I know. Yeah, I talked to him earlier. It's I didn't have a good title, and I just thought but I actually believe that in many ways. In many areas, books have become less great. So this actually ties into my first slide, which is about the business. So overpublishing, to me, is basically the key thing that publishers, I would say readers are experiencing. The problem that I see in my business, and I've been in this business for 33 years now, is overpublishing, which is in large part due to print on demand. It's not a dig against print on demand. The nature of print on demand is that everyone's a publisher, and they might make one book, they might make 50 books, but publishers don't have to make the investment in books anymore. We print everything offset on real presses with wet ink and actual people running the presses. Print on demand is done digitally. We don't use digital unless we really have to, because the quality is not as good, the ink is not as sharp. And if you know our books, I use 60-pound Finch opaque. It's the best paper you can get. It's not by accident. I'll talk a little bit about paper printing. I get really scattered, so if I don't, I'll just tell you everything in one slide and then I'll go through all the same things over again. But okay, let me speak to the overpublishing thing. And if I hit on something that you want me to address at the end of this, I'm happy to talk about it. Just remind me. If what's that? I'm being recorded. This is not interactive, sir. Not yet. What? I said it's not interactive. Kidding.
I'm sorry, but that's what I think we're talking about, right?
Well, so we're not content aggregators. Like, I'm a book publisher. That's the difference. So you can make money in this business by collecting lots of stuff. I could sign contracts with everyone here, give you all contracts, right? Cost me nothing. Here's a contract. Oh, No Starch offered me a contract. I'm actually very slow to offer contracts. There have been people we talk with for sometimes 3 months because I want to make sure, number one, that the book is something that we can work with. Number two, that it's something that person really wants to do and that they understand the amount of work involved and that it's going to be great. I published only 30 books last year, yet we own the tech bay at Barnes & Noble. That's the tech book section. Our books are outselling dummies books at Barnes & Noble. That's a testament to the strength of the kind of books that we do. I mean, that means we're beating packed. They're in there. A-Press, O'Reilly, Wiley, Pearson, every other publisher, including the Dummies series at Barnes & Noble. And it's not because they like me, although they do like it. I mean, I actually am friends with the Barnes & Noble computer book buyer, but that's not why she carries my, I mean, I can tell you that she won't carry my books unless she thinks they can sell, because she'll lose her job. Her goal is to bring in revenue. But I have the best-selling Python book in the world. In the world, Python Crash Course sold 500,000 copies in print in the world. It's the second best-selling tech book in the world after the coding interviews book. The next one is Python Crash Course. A lot of that is due, well, some of that is due in part to our switch from O'Reilly, who we worked with starting in 2003 until 2017, to Penguin Random House. So we now use the largest and best book distributor in the world, and I'm seeing all of my print sales go up. And I can tell you that my books have, I mean, if you've read my books over the years, they were generally always good. It's not that we didn't have misses, and it's not that they didn't try things that didn't work. I mean, I've had books fail, and I'll always have books that fail, because part of publishing is about risk. You take a risk, and sometimes, if you've seen my Cult of Mac book, which is, I call it a No Starch Press art project, gorgeous book. Looks like it's a real Mac book, but it doesn't really work on Amazon, and I'll speak to like that too. But people are buying books based on thumbnails today. Instead of going, I mean, you might go into a bookstore and you'll see, if you go to B&N, you'll see lots of our stuff. But most people are shopping based on thumbnails. The problem with Cult of Mac, for example, is it's a silver cover with a white Apple logo. It looks kind of weird. No one knows what it is. And unless you actually touch it, you don't understand it. When you see it, it sells. So anyway, I'm off track. Okay, let's go back to the overpublishing thing and the comments that you made about other publishers. I mean, I will say about, like, I don't believe that this overpublishing is good for the business at all. It's certainly not good for readers. I mean, it's kind of like when all books had media in them and people were like, oh, it's got a CD, that's a bunch of garbage. During that time, I made great CDs. I did a book called The Astronomer's Computer Companion, where I had a PDF in there. I never thought to even sell the ebooks. It was just on the CD. But I also had interactive is an overstatement, but you could, back in the 90s, add links into your PDF, and we would launch things. You'd click it, and stuff would pop up, or programs would run, and I didn't charge a dime for that, and I never thought to charge a dime. I did a book called The Gardener's Computer Companion. Probably no one here has ever seen it, but I built a whole front end with Install Shield, and built, again, an overstatement. It's like, building a PC today is not really building a PC. It's assembly. It's assembly, but it's a pain, and you have to get it to work. I built a whole front end, so I always added value to the things that I put in my books, and that's what I'll continue to do. Because if you're going to pay for my books, I want it to be not only a fair exchange, I want you to get a lot more than you bargained for, like conversations that we had earlier today. Like, if you pay $40 for one of my books, I want you to say, like, this thing is amazing. It's better than my $200 textbook. Practical malware analysis, people will say, is better than the $1,500 FireEye course on malware analysis, and you can get it for $50. And I want that always to be the case. I better. How about if I don't know what to do here. Oh, okay. So back to this all kind of comes back to the overpublishing thing. The issue that I see in the business today, and one reason that I believe that we continue to be successful, and we have been going on 26 years, I have not had a down year. We were up over 30% last year, which is amazing given how bad a business person I think I am. But I can tell you that there's no book publisher with my record in the whole business, from what I know. And what's my secret? I make good books. Even when we've had a lot of turmoil in the company, we're in San Francisco. So I'm fighting with tech companies for staff. So I'm hiring junior people because I can't get the experienced people, or the junior people go to a tech company and they make $140,000 a year. And then they go to another one 6 months later. I'm in Soma, and Atlassian's on the corner, Twitter's over there, Uber's over here, Heroku's over there. Like, just walk out the door and you'll find some tech company that will hire you because they're desperate, and they will hire. You can go to Dropbox. They have a 3-story restaurant, which I'm going to go to next week. Get free, Michelin quality food. They'll pay you, and they don't even know, they don't care what you do because they need bodies. I'm probably exaggerating, but that's the nature, but not by much. But that's the nature of being in San Francisco. And the city has certainly changed since I've been there. I'm off track again. God. If you're curious about how I actually work when I really have no script, you can look for my podcast that a friend of mine did. It's 55 minutes of me talking nonstop, and he starts by saying, this is my friend Ben Kurtz. This is Bill Pollock. We love him, but as you'll see, we can barely get a word in edgewise. And I talked for 50 minutes. And it actually I exhausted myself listening to it. It's like, I said, this guy's actually, what I was saying was actually interesting, but I was like, God, he doesn't stop. Over here, over there. And I had to turn it off. And that was me talking, listening to myself. That was a really weird experience. Just like when I tried to look at the back of my head in the mirror today and realized, like, that's really not possible no matter how fast you turn your head. You just can't see it. It was early. Yes, thank you for yes, okay, overpublishing. So I talked about print on demand. I think that's one issue. What's happened over the years is that a lot of publishers who you know and who I have held in high regard have stepped back and said, books aren't selling. I was told, I published Python Crash Course in 2014, I think. I published Python for Kids maybe around 2012, I'm not quite sure. My son was 15. I don't know when that was, but anyway. When we started publishing Python books, first I didn't do programming books because I thought, how can we do that? There are so many programming books, but I never bothered to look at them. And so we brought out Python Crash Course, and we said in-house, like, what do you think? I asked my editor, Liz. She said, I think it's pretty good. It's pretty clear. I didn't realize how significant that was. I mean, a programming book you can actually read. And we've also published books like Learn You a Haskell for a Great Good, Land of Lisp, which I think is a fantastic book, although I mean, Lisp is great if you want to exercise your brain. I think functional programming is interesting. I don't write any code. I read code, and I've read lots of code, but I don't have anything I want to write. I mean, if I had to, I'll write code. I messed with Java in 1997 or whatever it was when it was really early. Cut and paste, this didn't work, try this, like, that's Java. JavaScript, sorry, not Java. Java I won't. I tried the Android SDK, and it's like, my conclusion was, it's way too easy to make Android programs because I could just make some lousy Android program using the SDK. So it's like, that's all I needed to know, done. JavaScript was interesting because you could actually throw stuff at it and the mouse might work on event, whatever, it might not. Other things would happen and then you messed around with it. Oh yeah, okay, okay. I have other slides and I will just go on, prattle on forever, so that's a bad idea. Okay, overpublishing. So I mentioned the contract thing. Contracts cost the publisher nothing. Publisher says, hey, you want to write for us? So this company you mentioned, they spam people, and they, like, maybe you've all been contacted by some random person who's like, hey, you wrote a blog post, do you want to write a book? We need it in 3 months. And then we'll take first option on your next book, which we never have done. And they'll put the pressure on you, and then they'll sell 500 copies. How do I know? Because I get Nielsen Bookscan. I look at the sales. We can see the actual sales on books. Nielsen Bookscan is based on reported sales. But there's tons of these things. You go into a particular company's website and search Python, and there are probably 90 titles. I mean, it's insane. Or like Julia, you'll find like 15, 20 titles on Julia. It's crazy. So I don't want to, anyway, overpublishing. But it's very easy if someone says, if I say to you, send me your proposals, and I'll sign them all. and I'll just send them, you'll send it in and I'll tell you how great it is and send it in this format, and off it goes to the printer, which is the same printer, by the way, generally Lightning Source that Amazon uses for CreateSpace, which ties into my counterfeiting issues with Amazon, and they'll print it, and they'll print 20 copies. Barnes & Noble probably won't carry them because the books aren't any good. They won't pay the cost to carry them because Barnes & Noble charges for a certain level of promotion, not all levels, but they charge something called co-op for people to put books in stores. And the author walks away, it's like you spend, count up the hours and people will say like, I got 10 cents an hour. Right. I have authors who've made $500,000 in royalties on books. That's not every author. My BSD authors, sorry. I mean, they know they're not going to make money like that. But I've done BSD books for years, and I'll continue to if people want to do them. But like content aggregation is not publishing. Like book publishing is a lot of work. Content aggregation at a certain level is easy. I can capture a bunch of people around the world and feed us projects, and off they go. But I'm never going to do that. So does that answer the overpublishing? Does that that's what's going on. So it's like just sign everyone up and send it to the print-on-demand printer, and then there's a book, and people are like, oh, I got published, and what did you get? You got nothing. You got a wrapper. So if you're going to do that, go to Amazon CreateSpace. At least they'll pay you, and you can control it, or Lulu or LeanPub or whatever. But don't waste your time with stuff like that, because yeah. Okay. Right. Right. Well, that's where editors come in. Right. Yes. So I'm going to speak to the way we edit. So so one of the unfortunate side effects of this overpublishing is that you get authors who are competent, who work hard on their stuff, and they don't get support. My business is based on support. I have 6 or 7 people on staff full-time who edit line by line. And I don't know if anyone here has worked with us on anything, but like when I edit stuff, I'll send it back, and I've sometimes edited at the rate of 1 page per hour. If you've read Serious Cryptography, hard stuff, 1 page per hour there. And I made sure, and that is the best-selling cryptography book in the world. Ron Rivesta is using it to teach cryptography at MIT. I read every line, I followed all the math, so you don't have to sort it out yourselves. That's how we work, and that's how I'm training my editors. So none of my competitors do that. Right. So let's get past this. So editorial value. So this is the nature of, I think, what drives, or what used to drive book publishers. If you bought books from Addison Wesley or Prentice Hall years ago, Addison Wesley Professional Reference, there used to be excellent books there. Look at Richard Feynman's lectures. They probably didn't edit them, but those were great contributions. Stevens books, the old Stevens books, like authors were given time to write. Publishers actually sold the books. You're seeing very, very few books like that. Although we have, I expect to have 20 excellent books come out this year out of the 60 that we'll do, because I want to build new classics. Michael Karsk's Linux programming interface. William Schott's Linux command line. That book sold 100,000 copies, over 100,000 in print, and it's free online. Which is kind of eloquent JavaScript, free online. Automate the boring stuff with Python, free online. The Rust programming language book, which we rewrote the Rust docs and gave it back to the community, free online. All of these books are successful and have sold well into the tens of thousands of copies, or in some cases, 6 figures. In some cases, that's not routine. People say that the average tech book sells 4,000 to 6,000 copies. That's probably not the case for our books, but I'm also very, very picky. So editorial values are key. And these companies, I think, have lost the vision and also, kind of left behind the responsibility that I think a publisher has to actually make something worthwhile. Why, if all you want is to make a fast buck, this is really not the business for it, like, why don't you pick another industry? Like, go run a hedge fund. I mean, when I went into this business, I took a career interest test that said go into advertising or book publishing, and I thought, no offense to all the people who are making shopping carts, well, yes, or selling ads, but it's like I couldn't see selling ads. I couldn't see, I didn't want to be in the ad business. I wanted to make interesting, I wanted to teach people. I created a nonprofit too, by the way, called the No Starch Press Foundation, and I put $1 million in there now to give back to the community. Like that's how much I care about what I do. Because the thing, we go around life once, right? So when I have coronavirus and I'm lying in my bed, like, oh my God, I'm gonna die now. At least I feel like I made something useful, rather than like, I made a shopping cart and look at these great ads I sold. Like I actually, Python for Kids probably sold over 100,000 copies, and you figure with pass-along readership, we've taught 300,000 10-year-olds to program in Python. I happen to have worked really hard on that book, and my son did the tech review when he was 15, and we made an excellent book. And we put it out there just like we did the scratch books years ago, when scratch books weren't selling because they were written by people who didn't understand a 10-year-old kid. The kid doesn't want you to pander, they don't want you to talk down to them, but they have limited attention span, and if you've got kids, it's like they'll flip through looking for the content. A smart kid, or let's say an inspired, curious kid, they want, where's the content? And they get bored really easily. They don't want, like, my son when he was 10 was reading college textbooks, right? He's not alone. There are kids like that. And if and maybe some of you were too, right? So it's like, but if you give a kid like that entertainment, Dorling Kindersley, for example, has gotten in. So I started the Lego book market in 2003. No one was doing Lego books, no one. I also created the Programming for Kids book market with Python for Kids and Super Scratch Programming Venture. Dorling Kindersley, which is now owned by my distributor, they've tracked what I do, I know for a fact, and then they went into those markets, and I don't step on the gas unless it's in my car to, like tromp all over the market. I'm just gonna go at a steady pace and make something great. So my editorial values are like, make something great. We craft the books. I really think of this as a type of craft. I've been very fortunate in that we've been very successful in the last several years, and we've really taken the mantle in many ways away from O'Reilly, a company that I've had a lot of respect for and that I started working with in 2003 when we were really simpatico. Like, it was really exciting to work with their editors, some of whom are still there, but their editorial values have changed. It's not, they're allowed to do that. They're a business, right? But mine haven't. Mine have only become clearer, and what I spend my time doing is training my editors. So I basically would sit in a room, pop the chapter up on the screen, and I start editing the chapters that they're working on and show them what I'm doing and try to verbalize how I create something. And that all has to do with training my apprentices, making sure that people, when I'm in the bed with coronavirus, they can step up and like work on these things, and I won't say like, what did you do here? This is part of being on the spectrum, right? Like, you did what, and help me understand, are two phrases that come out of my mouth really easily when they shouldn't. So let's see what's next. My point here with this room for everyone slide is that there is room for all kinds of publishing. I believe that publishers should be more upfront about what they're offering, but really, why should they? I mean, they're businesses, but what I hope to do is get people to understand like how to evaluate a publisher. When a publisher says, here's a contract, ask them what you're gonna get for that. Like, you're gonna bust your butt for 6 months writing something, and then they sell 300 copies and they walk away and say sorry. Or maybe it's like, hey, you're one of our best sellers. I get emails from these authors all the time. I'm one of the best-selling authors at this company, and we look at the sales figures and it's like 632 copies. And last month I sold 6,000 copies of one title and 1,200 of another and 800. And last month, we're talking about 6 months or a year's sale on some of these titles. It's not good. Here I want to talk briefly about when I think about the book as a thing, and I'm talking about so there are two aspects to this, right? You have the information package that is a book itself, like it's a collection of information. Why do people keep buying books? People predicted the death of the book for years, but ultimately, if I want to learn something deeply, if I want to learn cryptography, I'm not going to do it on the web. If I want to learn JavaScript or Python, yes, all the information that you want is in a Google search. And that's really helpful. If the network breaks and you have an error message, you can fix it. If Linux does something weird, I can fix it. Putting Linux on the ThinkPad, it turned out all I had to do was disable secure boot, although I have to just figure out how to. The new distros apparently will work with secure boot. But anyway, I had to get it to work. That's that problem is solved. People stop looking around for books when there's an answer like that. But say you want to learn networking or Linux system and network programming, so you pick up Linux programming interface. All the information is out there. Do you want to spend like 6 months digging it up? Or do you want an author to like filter it like Linux command line and say, this is what's actually useful? Because you can all read a man page, but which of the 50 flags am I supposed to use? And what's actually useful? Do you want to figure them all out? I don't. Or like you have you're trying to reinstall pfSense. It's like, what do I have to do? You have to like set up the TFT thing. You ever try to like, if you have a pfSense firewall, it's a little tricky when it goes down. It's like, where do you start? So, but we can look for that. And I don't think we need a book on pfSense either. I just use the defaults. One thing I learned about pfSense is don't touch anything.
So, what is it?
Oh yeah, so what I want to talk about with a paper book, one thing I think about and reasons why I care about things like paper, the paper we use, one thing I've noticed with the book is when you read it, the paper bends and you kind of track, I mean, I don't want to sound like a Luddite here, but it's like this physical thing. I track it with my eye. Like I'll track it's not the glitter, like the reflectivity in the paper. You kind of track it, so it's helping you to highlight stuff with your eyes. There's this, the contrast in a paper page cannot be beat at this point in time. If it can be, then great. I mean, I've tried to read books on Kindle, and what happens to me is like, I adjust the font size and I have no idea where I am. And that's it. But I remember going back to my parents' house to look at old biology textbooks from the 80s, and I remembered notes that I wrote in the margin. This was years later. This was like 10 years ago. There's something about there's the way that the layout imprints on your brain, and if you read Hacker News, you see notes about like note-taking, the act of note-taking and how that helps you to learn. There's something about the physicality of a book, and for kids it makes a huge difference. Giving a kid a physical book is a lot different from saying, here's your ebook file, because the kids hold it, like they actually relate to the thing, and I think adults do too. I mean, John Steinhardt's Secret Life of Programs, which is an amazing book. Yes, I have PDFs of everything, but I don't want to read any of the PDFs. I think PDF, by the way, is the only format I would use for ebook because I can't stand the rendering otherwise. But I'm also an old guy, and anyway, so yeah, and that's why and then suddenly the pages went from, it was a 300-page book and now it's 1,200. And I have no idea where I was, and I don't want to spend my time figuring out how to put in bookmarks. Like I started reading Ian M. Banks' like Wasp Factory, right? I gave up because I just lost track, and I couldn't stand to have to find it again. In a book, I know it's got like positioning, right? You know that it was about over here. Try to do that with an ebook file. And I'm not an apologist for the book, but that's how it works. Yeah. Sure. Right. Yeah, it imprints in your brain. You have a vision of the thing. You have a feeling for where it is. You have an idea where it was. That's why the glossaries go in the back of the book, because that's where you look for them. So if the glossary goes in the chapter, don't put the glossary there because that's not how readers work. You look for the glossary at the back. Whether you're 10 or you're 60, you're looking in the back of the book. Don't hide it there. Don't stick definitions in the middle because that's not where people look for them. So work the way that the reader works. So it's this, I think of the book as this, I think of the reader experience, and when I talk with my staff about editing, it's like the reader is reading down the page. So our code explanations go after the code, because first you see the code, and then we talk about the code. I've had editors who don't understand that, and I had them change the whole book before it went to the printer, because that's not how people work. That's why I use like wingdings and these little numbered balls in code. So they're like laser pointers in the code. If I have a block of code, and I want you to, it's always bothered me, like books will have like 300 lines of code, but they want to show you one line. Well, look for line 63. Well, why do you have all the other lines there? So our books don't have line numbers because I don't want to have to find the line. I want you to say, look over here, because that's what you would do if you're teaching. Like, and I have the topics about that. So that's kind of how I think about it. The book as a physical object. In my case, when you buy from us direct, we give you all the ebooks, and that's basically because I don't have a good argument for selling them again. and I've done it forever. So when you buy from us, we give you everything, and it's DRM free, always has been. information package. Let's talk about paper, printing, and binding, just briefly. So I talked a little bit about paper. We use the 60-pound Finch opaque. Things that matter in paper are opacity. I hate it when I pick up a book and I can see the type on the next page. There's always a certain amount of show-through. It's called show-through. There has to be, or your books will be like massively thick. But the paper that we choose is Finch opaque. It feels good in your hand. It carries ink well because our ink is laid down, it's wet. So if you put something wet on a rough surface, it just bleeds all over the place. So basically that's called calendaring. It's a smooth surface and the ink is sharp. The images are good. It is not the best paper in the world. I mean, there's art papers that you get in art books, but we're not making art books, although we do make art books, but not I'm talking coding books or books, whatever. And I mean, I publish for geeks, right? So I have Game Console, I do Lego books. Those are art books, and they use an art paper. But we're looking at photographs, and it's a different kind of thing. I'm talking about like informational books. I mean, I'm at a scale conference, I'm not at the Lego conference. We use lay flat bindings. We had a problem last year, 10 books. What happened was, so lay flat bindings, the way that works is like you take, books are printed and then there's a book block. And the book block is just basically like a bunch, there's a lot of manual work. It's collected pages and then they cut them. With lay flat, I think they roughen the page so that you can actually get good glue adhesion. You think of paper, you don't want a totally smooth surface. You use certain glues at a certain temperature. The glues there's an art to gluing a book. What they do with lay flat is they actually bind a strip of fabric on the back. So the book block is actually bound to itself, and then the cover floats free. And I can't tell you a number of people write in and say, my cover is cheap. They use cheap bindings. It's actually more expensive because there's more handwork. But what happens is that the cover floats free because I don't like books that crack. I'm very particular. Yeah, like how many times you ever read a book and it's like, it's in halves. I just, lay flat binding won't do that because it's a flexible glue that's attached to fabric. So that's what you're actually reading and that's what you're holding. And the cover is a wrapper. But and I have people write in when we had the binding issues, people wrote in and said, I got Gorilla Glue and I just glued the back. It's like, yours wasn't actually bad. That's how it works. The cover stands free from the back. O'Reilly used to do this years ago, and we've been doing it forever, and we'll continue to do it because our readers like it. I also do things like I print the inside covers when we can, inconsistently because sometimes the printer couldn't do it. I like the book to look nice. I've even thought of putting in ribbon bookmarks and French flaps, but I think people will just be weirded out by that stuff. It's like, what's wrong with this tech book? Why is there a ribbon sticking out, or the ribbon fell off? And people complain. So paper, printing, binding, and that's offset printing. We will print shorter run stuff sometimes in digital. When you see this book, Silence on the Wire, for example, is printed digitally because we only print like 100 at a time. And you'll see that the cover is thinner, the paper's not quite right, the finish doesn't feel quite right, but ultimately we can't afford to print offset. When you print offset, you have a setup charge that doesn't go away. They have to clean the rollers. This is old school printing. This is how books used to be printed, and that's how our books are printed. So when you go to my booth, you'll see I think everyone there, well, unless the tech books are done lay flat with this lay flat binding. The 4-color stuff is done typically overseas. Each book comes with a coronavirus infection from China. They're sewn, generally sewn. Sewn bindings are more expensive. Those are, if you know the POC Bibles that we do, those are done by a printer in China, a Bible printer with a fake leather cover, a real headband. They're sewn together. They've got those. That's lay flat. Yeah, I didn't bring any samples because I don't know. No, you know what it is. Like so we also use a heavier cover stock, and you can feel it. I could use a heavier cover stock still. And again, if it's not with the geek/hacking communities, like if you make too many changes, people get really nervous. We have people write in. I love our readers because people actually care. So like, I've had people write in and someone showed like with a caliper, like the measurement was off. I'm not kidding. And pictures of like, this is out of alignment. But I actually respect that. Like, I want to hear about that. And then people write in and say, this might be a counterfeit because they didn't like the paper was wrong. And the paper had been substituted without my knowing it. And didn't make me happy. It's like, I don't like paper because, so what you benefit from is my obsessions, my spectrumness. It's like, I want things a certain way. and the book should feel that. We also hire, each one is illustrated by a real illustrator. Like we pay an artist to do an illustration. I work on the concept. Sometimes they're better than others. Sometimes they're great. Josh Ellingson is one of the artists that we use. There's another woman, Gina. There's a woman, Gina, that we use, and we're trying different people. And the guy who did this does some of my security covers. I wanted a death metal T-shirt because I'm the only book publisher I think that has one. And I said, Rick, can you give me can you do death metal? He's like, yeah, here's my death metal site. And then he does death metal art. So we'll do another one because why not? It's really great when you walk down the street and people say, nice shirt, and you're thinking like, yeah, and they're thinking like, what band is that? And I'll say, it's the best band ever, the book publishing band. And they think you're out of your mind. And then just leave the elevator. I've done that multiple times. It's often in elevators because people are sitting there staring at you, trying to figure out what it is that you're wearing. So it's.
Was there actually counterfeiting?
Yes, yeah, I'll go to that. Yeah, I'll get to that. I want to make sure to get through everything. Authorship is key to our books. I'm very picky about the authors we're being on, not only because I want to make sure that our readers are happy, but I want to make sure that an author can work with our process. Kyle's worked with us before. We're very picky. And we're going to be more picky as I train my editors to do what I do, which is like, we want to make sure that this is going to work. And we're working on a new book, so I put you in touch with the developer, and we're going to my goal is to make something great. Like, why just make another book? I mean, we have lots of books. You need more doorstops? There are publishers that will sell you those. My book shouldn't be doorstops. You should think it's like, this is really great. When people come up to me and say, thank you, this was fantastic. I never understood this. But the manga guides, we do these manga guides to math. I didn't send a lot of stuff to Scale because the Scale drayage company is really expensive. It cost us $618 to get the pallet from the loading dock to the booth, just so you know. Yeah, it got nothing to do with Scale. It's like it's the drayage company. But that's why we didn't send 3 pallets, because then we have to send them back. But we do these manga guides to math and science, which are translations from the Japanese. We rewrote the entire thing. They're very expensive. They're making basically no money. I did 14 of them. Translated, checked this math and science, made sure they're great. They're much better than the Japanese originals, I can tell you that. So anyway, authorship is key. So I look for people who have something to say, they're passionate about stuff, they want to support, they want to make a great book. A lot of our authors have only one book in them. So my intention is to help them to make that book great. So that and some of our authors, you'll see, it's like John Erickson, Hacking the Art of Exploitation. John's written 2 versions of the hacking book. You know John, I think, right? Yeah. Anyway, he'll never write a 3rd because now he does reversing. And the reason he won't write it is he says, well, what would I write about? And that authenticity or that kind of responsibility to the reader is really important to me. We don't just crank out revisions. I mean, if we do a revision, I'm going to make sure, like how Linux works, it's going to be a thorough revision. And I gave Brian the time to make something excellent. Bill Schatz is like, I'm ready with a new edition of Linux command line. Marijn Haverbeek, Eloquent JavaScript. When he's ready, the book is done. And I actually mean that. I own the company 100%. No one's telling me what to do. I can't work with anyone. I've been fired from 3 companies, including A-Press, which I co-founded in 1997. They forced me out in 1999. That's a company I don't mind bad-mouthing, sorry. But they don't exist anyway. They're not a company. But I founded the company. They use my contract still. I wrote the contract. They still use it. The goal with that company was to make great books. For the first 2 or 3 years, that was the intent. Now they're just an imprint at Springer Verlag. Print and ebooks. I don't know what I wanted to say here, really. Skip that. Title and package. I think title and package are absolutely key in this business. So I work really hard on getting the right title. John Steinhardt's book, Secret Life of Programs. We finally agreed on a title about a week before it went to the printer. It was called Foundations of Computer Programming, but that sounded really boring. And I think, and the concept is like, this is how the machine actually works. It's cool. I could have done with a different cover, but eventually, like, you have to say enough is enough off to the printer. But that's a fantastic book. So title and package is absolutely key. The title needs to be readable. Again, people are buying books off like postage-sized images on Amazon. The first thing people do when they go for a certain, even if they don't buy from Amazon, you do a search, Amazon comes up. That's number one. It's got to look right on there. And the way people, and you scan the pages. People don't spend their time digging in. If the cover doesn't grab you, people pass it by. And you can say all day long, like, oh, but it's really great and I love this. It's like, but if people pass it, it doesn't matter. It's the same way that when we buy books in a bookstore, you scan the shelves and think about the act of scanning a bookshelf. You just cross 25 books and you lit on this one, and you're probably not going back. So if my books don't grab you like my yellow and black books do, we lose the potential reader. So the title should not be too creative, unless you're a total star, which is not most people. As in, like, they're buying you, not the title. It's like, that's, I don't know, name some famous person here. I don't know. Michelle Obama, right? Who cares? Oh, Barack Obama, what's his name? Trump, whatever. Like someone famous. You're buying that person. It doesn't even matter what the book is called. But in most cases with these books, it has to hook someone. It has to say, like, this is why you want to buy this. And I like 3-word titles, 3 or 4, no more than 4, unless it's something really crazy. And you can be more expansive in a subtitle. That's where it's more descriptive. But short titles are good. Branding, that yellow and black series has worked for us really well. I'm doing more of those books. We also, we've got the security books that have this kind of darker, whatever. I don't know. Those are fun to do sometimes. Branding is key. I've been all over the map with branding. I'm trying to, because I just kind of like the way I talk, right? I'm just, let's try this today. We'll make this thing. It's like, and then you look at it, it's like, we're all over the place. So trying to focus on building that brand. And when you go to Barnes & Noble and you see the yellow and black books, it's like, they stand out in the whole bookstore because they're just cool. And it's real art. It's not like clip art. Licenses, I leave licensing, well, so there are multiple aspects to licensing. One is the book license. If an author comes to me and says, it's Creative Commons, will you keep it? I say, sure. I have multiple books under free licenses. The Rust programming language book is under an MIT license, as in you could actually sell that book, but what we're relying on is the strength of the Rust community. If someone starts selling it and saying this is official, the community will take them down. That took a leap of faith to do that. I actually held that book up because I was not happy with Mozilla, and I was like, they basically said, well, never mind the details, but it wasn't a fun conversation. But basically, it's like, take a risk. So we did. And I'll take more risks, just as I do with the Humble Bundles. I've been doing those since 2015. None of the books in there are locked down. But Bram Cohen's an old friend of mine, and he wrote BitTorrent. So BitTorrent's full of our books, too. You can consider that a lending library. I just put it on YouTube. But I'm also not shy about saying, and if you borrow our books and you think they're useful, then pay for them. But if you read them and they're not worth buying, don't buy them. Why should you? How does a library work? I take a book out of the library. I haven't been to the library for 10 years, or more. But that's how libraries work. No one complained about that. Go pick it up in the library. If it's good, then you'll buy it. If it's not worth buying, then don't waste your money. If my books don't deliver on the promise, if they're not worth buying, don't pay for them. If you look at it and it's like, there's nothing in here I need, why should you pay me $40? You shouldn't. And we'll give you your money back if you did. I won't do it personally. I mean, someone else will do it. So that's licenses. And I don't really care if it's Creative Commons license. The main thing is I don't want to, because of the nature of this business, I don't want one of our competitors to pick up a title that I worked on and then sell it. And that hasn't happened yet. But like non-commercial, or for non-commercial use, fine. I want people to be able to read it, a student to read it, whatever. It's fine. Because I've raised people up indirectly in this community from 10 years old. And now they're like running tech companies. It's like my bookshelf is full of No Starch books. Or people I met at DEF CON, I'm just really off track here. Anyway, licenses, editing. If I don't, this is the way it works. Quality first is the key for me with editing, is to make sure that the books are going to be great. And that ties into acquisitions, which is basically when we bring on a manuscript. I want something that's exciting. I want my editor to say, I want to see the smiles in the face, like this is really cool. That doesn't mean I'll sign that book, because I'm evaluating the response and trying to make sure there's another No Starch book. Thank you. So I want to make sure that the book's actually going to be worthwhile. So in terms of editing, here's some things that I have authors, that I encourage authors to do. Visuals. How many times you see a book and it's like, here's a piece of art and the author doesn't talk about it. It happens in presentations all the time. That's why I don't have any diagrams. But like, if they would just talk about the diagram, you'd get something out of it. So it's funny, I want to do a book on ham radio hacking, which would be great, or ham radio for hackers. So I'm working with the author now, and the classic thing is he's got a whole description of a receiver and how it works. Like it brings in the signal. I didn't know this until I talked to him the other day. It filters the signal, modifies it. Like here's a nice clean signal, and it goes down through to generate audio. But it's like all this stuff that he had to talk about was in the diagram, and he just had to talk me through it. And it's like there's 3 more pages that I actually need, because if I understand how a receiver works, a halodyne, whatever, a heterodyne receiver, I can understand that you can take me a lot. What? Super. Okay, yeah, I don't know. I just learned some of it 2 days ago. But like, if you can explain stuff with visuals, people create these complex visuals and forget to talk about them. And if we would just talk about them, whether it's in a presentation or it's in a book, you take the reader so much further, and you build this base of understanding that lets you go so much further. Instead of having to circle back over and over again, like they go along with you. So I have people talk about visuals, and I take out throat clearing, which is like, blah, 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 and this when I was 20 years old. Like when my mind's, I say like to my editors, if something isn't clear, then work through it and make it clear. If your mind starts wandering, cut. Because, you ever read a book and you're going through the pages and then it's like, where's the content? No Starch Press basically means no bullshit. So take this stuff out, because no one's going to read it anyway. So why waste the person's time? You can get more out of my 200-page book sometimes than you can out of a 600-page book. I remember looking at networking books in the bookstore, big fat networking books in the 90s, and it's like I needed 10 pages. So why did they spend the time writing all this stuff that you're never going to look at? Cut, paste here, file open, like, well, really? And like, so I like to say, well, forget that part and start at the 10 pages and go on from there. So you'll find that in my books, like, I want you to be learning something. If you're a 10-year-old kid, it's a little different approach. But I want that kid to be learning something too, or 6-year-old. But take the stuff out that no one wants. My son said to me, why is it that every Python book starts the same way? Well, that's a good question. He said, shouldn't there be just like one book you can say, just read this first? So I do think about it that way, because why do we have to repeat? How many times you can edit this? A variable is this, loop is that. Here we go again. This person said it better in this other book. We have to take it back there. And it's mind-numbing. I don't like bullets. There's a place for bullets. But when I see bullets, I think documentation. I also don't like M-dashes. Like M-dashes to me are like the lazy. Do you write with M-dashes? You'll hear about it. No, there's a place for an M-dash, but there's a kind of lazy way of writing, and not as in people are lazy, but it's just like don't want to take the time to write a transition. Take the time to write the transition. I don't want to. M-dashes are ugly. That's all. I also don't like stacked kind of punctuation. Like it gets complicated if you're writing code. Don't follow some command with a semicolon because people will type the semicolon. So those are little things that have to do with the way that we read, the way we process information. I like headings to be clear. Can we just dispense with the cute headings from 1990 already? It's like if the one of our books, TCP/IP Guide, which I forgot to send here, when he first sent me that manuscript, it was full of smileys. And I said to Charles, if the joke is funny, make sure it's funny. If the joke is not funny, take it out. But no smileys. It's a book on TCP/IP networking. So anyway, they're not in there. But I like clear headings. I want to be able to use the headings to navigate, to tell me what I'm supposed to get out of that section. Because if you've got a 5-page section with a heading that makes no sense to you, or it's lacking a topic sense, what am I supposed to get out of this? A classic thing is the answer's at the end of the chapter. I just went through this with editors. 30-page chapter, and you're reading, and maybe you've had this experience, and we hopefully make sure you don't have this experience, and you're wondering what they're trying to teach you. What are you supposed to learn? And it's all at the end. So we take the summary and we make it the beginning. This happens all the time. I've been doing this for so long, it's like, here we go again. Let's just look over here. And there it is, sitting there. That's the chapter overview, but it's at the end of the chapter. Sometimes there's a nice surprise, like Silence on the Wire, fantastic book. There's a surprise in the end, but that's the point. But like, if I'm trying to learn something, tell me what I'm supposed to learn and help me navigate it. So it's like reading a history book, and all they want you to do is memorize dates, and then they say, oh, you don't have to learn the dates. We just wanted you to understand what a blitzkrieg is. It's like, but I have all the dates down. Go watch World War II in color. You'll know what the blitzkrieg is. Introductions. I like good, clear introductions. I want an introduction to the chapter. I want an introduction to the section. Tell me what I'm supposed to get out of this. Be clear. Don't be boring. Just like tell me where I'm going with it. Audience is absolutely key. Like, who are you writing for? Authors don't necessarily think about this. And it's funny when people respond, it's like, oh, we never really thought about that. Well, someone is going to read this and they're going to exchange money for that. So what do they want to get from that? How do you approach that? Like, think about, like when it's 3 o'clock in the morning, I talk about profiling your audience. Like, who are you writing for? Who is this person? What do they want from this? Let's talk about sales. I'm going to cruise through the rest of this. Selling the thing. Marketing. Book marketing has changed a lot. I can tell you we've bought media databases and we sent out 5,000 press releases and no one responds. People are overloaded with information. So basically the key things, what Amazon is unfortunately a key place for marketing now. Amazon Marketing Services is a whole thing. You can go in there and build pages. So I'm going to try to build like display ads for each book and add real content. But the first thing people hit when they do a Google search is an Amazon page. So that's absolutely key. And Penguin Random House is great with that. There's a lot that can happen in the background to actually build that information, and there's a lot that we need to do. So, you know, as much as I don't want to be spending my time building Amazon pages, that's kind of what we have to do. So that's one of the key areas for us in terms of marketing, and we actually pay Amazon, they get fees. They get like a percentage fee off your sales, and they'll squeeze more out of it. They keep trying to squeeze more out of every book publisher every year. There's an argument back and forth. Social media is absolutely key, I think, and we're weak on social media, in my opinion. We do Twitter. We had Instagram accounts with nothing on it. You know, Facebook, we forget to respond. So that'll be a key thing going forward. Unfortunately, in spite of the fact that we're not doing everything right, we're doing terrifically well as a company, but there's more that we can do. And I think social media is key. Distribution is absolutely key for us, and that means sales reps going out and selling books into stores. The change for us from O'Reilly, which had basically 2 sales reps and a service, publisher services to Penguin Random House is huge. Penguin Random House has 110 sales reps. They work 24,000 accounts. O'Reilly had just very few accounts. All they have are books. So if you're Penguin Random House, you can't sell, you're not selling ebooks. You don't understand what they are necessarily anyway. You're selling books, right? You're working with vendors. They're selling into mass market. They're selling into Walmart and Costco. Everywhere books are sold, that's where they want to be. And that's the kind of distribution I want. I'll handle ebook, but distribution is key. They're extremely efficient with fulfillment, so they can basically get stuff to stores in a couple of days, which is a big deal in the book business. They ship to Amazon multiple times a day, and they talk to Amazon, which is a huge thing. No one talks to Amazon now. So when I've had counterfeiting issues, which we've had, and I should be there soon, I think, before the thing ends. Better check. Yeah, oh yeah, I'm almost done. They solve these problems for us. In-store promotion, I talked about Barnes & Noble. So what Borders used to do the same thing. There's something called co-op in the business. So basically it's cooperative advertising, as in you give us money, we give you good placement. Supermarkets work the same way. You walk in there and you see like product placement or something that stands out. They're paying, everyone's paying. They're selling retail space. When I first got into this business, I thought it was really weird. It's like, wait, you have to pay for that? But then you realize that they're paying for real estate. And in order to keep these things, and they want to profit, so why not sell it? So typically with bookstores, it's only offered if they think that your book fits, they think the book is good. It's not like serial placement. It's not like, here's the new cereal, this one has 60% more sugar. That's not how it works. It's like, we think your books are great, so here's an opportunity, you're going to pay for it, but we typically get really great deals from Barnes & Noble. We love the support. But we also have stores like Powell's in Portland. Powell's has promoted my stuff since the beginning. We don't pay them a dime. I went into Powell's and I walked up to the cash register and like, there are our manga guides and these books, these survive books that we did for kids, these biology books. And I said, what are these doing here? It's like, whoa, they had, it's like the guy didn't know why I was asking. Oh, they're here because they sell. When our books are promoted, there was a lot of resistance to the yellow and black books, and there still are, as in certain countries. People didn't understand it. It's like, these look like cartoons. Yeah, they are cartoons. So, but these are books for geeks. When people put them out there, they take off. In China, you can look up Python Crash Course in Chinese. It sold probably 450,000 copies in print in China, and it looks like our book. So in China, we're super famous. Like if I go to China, the publisher would be like, No Starch Press is very famous in China. Like, well, now I know why. Because you can see kids reading our books, there's pictures on subways. Like, I mean, it's that brand. So that's foreign rights. So basically another resource we have is we sell rights for translation. And we sell into like 33 different languages. That's another source of revenue. Ebooks are a source of revenue, of course. And you all know about that. Counterfeiting and piracy, this is what some people may want to know about. So I've been pretty public about this. We've had about a dozen books counterfeited by Amazon, and what I want to make clear is that they're not third-party marketplace. They were actually, if you pressed the main buy button, you got a counterfeited product. So what happened was, from what we can tell, with Amazon won't tell us, but I can put it together. I mentioned earlier this print-on-demand printer. So basically, Amazon uses Lightning Source. What happened is robots, like some automated process, someone pulled the switch and said, yes, you have the right to print it. It's someone in Africa, someone in India. It ended up replacing our entire inventory. You could not buy anything other than, maybe some of you tracked this when it was happening. Python for Kids was one that I was public about. You got big fat one-color Python for Kids books from Amazon. That was delivered to you. And we've had others this past year. Art of Assembly Language was counterfeited. Book of R, I think, was counterfeited. But the thing I want to be clear about is not in Marketplace. That was the main buy button. They replaced our inventory. So authors didn't get a dime. And my whole thing there is like, why should we have to police Amazon? We shouldn't. So we didn't get a dime out of that. So that's why they were lawyers. Do I really want to be suing my main vendor? No, I don't. I mean, why should I have to do that? But that's also why I rely on Penguin Random House, because now, with this situation, when there's a problem, they will stop it. But ultimately, it shouldn't happen. And that was, I'll say this: when I got the books, it's like, no, that's really impressive. The book was really big. It felt like so much information, and then I realized, like, wait a second, this is totally fake. It was like 8.5 by 11 trim size instead of 7 by 9. Like big fat books were coming in with these covers, and I thought it was impressive. But in one case, like the pages didn't fit. And others, the Art of Assembly Language, I think, the main picture was replaced with something that looked like it was not properly clipped. It was because the cover didn't fit. So they replaced our cover with the counterfeit cover, and the spine didn't fit properly. So it's like you have this extra spine, and it may even still be there. So we've had this kind of experience with our main vendor. And I'll say this too: you'll never find that at Barnes & Noble. It never happened there. They outsold POC GTFO Bible. They outsold Amazon with that. And what I would love for Amazon to do is to actually work with us on stuff like that. Like, why do I have to fight to get attention there? I don't understand that. Like, wouldn't you care? No, because, what do they care? Anyway, piracy, I talked about BitTorrent and stuff. Piracy is whack-a-mole. When an author writes in and says, I'm concerned about this, we'll send a takedown. But otherwise, I don't spend my time fighting that because I think visibility is the biggest problem you have in the book business now. Getting visibility, I want people to see our stuff. Think of it as, I have actually considered trying to do like a shareware thing, because I remember when McAfee was actually useful. And, not that I have an opinion on that either, but, but I don't really have an easy way to do that. But there's a piracy, all of our stuff is pirated. As soon as it comes out, it's in pirate sites. So I have time for some questions. I don't know. I don't know how this works or whatever. And then there's my email addresses. We're looking for authors all the time, and I'm always eager for feedback. So yeah.
How do you level? Because there's a lot of introductory material.
Right.
It's hard to find stuff to take like reading to advance.
I think about the reader more than anything. I don't label my books like beginning, intermediate, advanced, because the thing is, you might say, I'm a beginner, but you've been doing something for 25 years and you just know how much you don't know. So I don't really know where to place that person. What I try to focus on is just describing what's in it, and people can decide. So I like to use the word experienced, which I understand. It's like, for the experienced publisher is different from the advanced publisher, or the experienced programmer is different from the advanced programmer. So.
But do you push the authors to, like, as you said, there should be one Python book that's here a variable, here's a loop. Do you try to push them, or it's more like, here's how to...
Push them to do what?
Towards more like, here's like how to architect things if you're more experienced.
It's about the reader. If it's a programming book for kids, that's one thing, right? But if it's like, Serious Python is designed for developers, so what would the developer want? The developer doesn't need a definition of every term. Like, they already presumably know what a variable is, you know what I mean? So like, it all starts with the reader. So what I try to teach my staff to do is think about who's reading it and what do they need. Because if you only have one speed, which is like, just define everything, you'll drive the authors crazy and the reader crazy too. So I think about who the reader is, and that's how I answer that question. So I don't think advanced, I think experienced, or I think like novice, but sometimes experienced, like we're doing a new C book and talking about the title there, and it's like, from the author's standpoint, it's a book for beginners, but from someone who's not a C programmer, it's not a book for beginners. But the way he looks at it, it's like, but this is all so easy. It's like the mathematician is like, how come you don't understand number theory? I don't know. Like, how come I don't understand it? Because I failed algebra, whatever, who knows? I almost did fail algebra. But like, so it's very hard to put a label on there. So I think better to just say like, what is that? What are the prerequisites? What should you understand? Have a good understanding of this. And then people should slot in that way. I don't have a good way to do it. I mean, some things are clearly for beginners, and that's for for developers. But I think I use terms more like for developer or experienced rather than advanced. If that answers your question, yeah.
So earlier when you said you're 60 books to publish every year, right? Trying to find what.
Well, that's double from our normal. We never did that many. That's this year.
But when you're picking the books to publish every year, right?
Right.
You're trying to pick the books that people are interested in. So what are you doing? How do you go and figure that out?
I spend a lot of time at conferences talking to people, and I listen a lot. Like I'm not listening now. I'm just blabbing away, right? But I'm looking at interactions. I want to see my best friends are hackers and geeks, right? So but the important thing is I'm not publishing books for myself. I'm mirroring what people want. So when I come to scale, I'm looking at the audience. I look at how people respond. I listen to the complaints. Hate this, hate that. That's important to me. Like, love this. This is great. I want to see what books people pick up, what they carry around. Like, this is not a money-making show for me. Like, this is a fact-finding mission. Like, what are people into? When I go to DEF CON, DEF CON, you've seen us at DEF CON. Like, it's like we've got 7 people there. Sometimes I've sent 10 pallets, and we're 6 people deep. That's great. We make money at DEF CON, but it's not about, the money is one thing, but what I want is, what are they excited about? What's flying off the table? And what do people say they want next? Like you gave me some ideas today. I want that feedback. I want to hear, and then I'll evaluate it. And then I'll look at sales numbers. We have access to sales numbers. I think about what I know about the audience, what kind of things people actually want, what sort of things people have asked me for. I'm looking at it. I've been editing technical books since 1987. Can we edit this thing? Is it something we want to work on? Does one of my editors want to champion it? Are they excited about it? Do I think that if I'm standing at a table at Scale or DEF CON or ShmooCon or CanSec, whatever, would people think that's cool? I'm looking for the aha moment. Where someone says, oh, wow, you have a book on that? Then I've got a popular title. Linux Basics for Hackers. Like, that title was key, but it's like it's a basic book on Linux, right? But a lot of people are trying to get into security, or they're trying to understand Linux, and it's a reasonable size. So I'm looking at multiple factors, and I'm looking at my own sales history. What's actually worked for us? Does that answer? And all these things go on at once. And do I like the writing? Can I learn from this book? Do we have to rewrite the whole thing? Those are all factors that I take into account. And sometimes I'll tell people, like, your project seems really cool, but I can't sell a book if there are only 3,000 users. I can't, not for my list. Pact will do it. They'll sign it. But but like, you'll spend your time writing it, and 200 people will buy it. But I'm looking for big market books. I'm also looking at the markets to see where there's a hole. So when I did the Scratch books, there were books on Scratch, and they were terrible because they were like, Scratch for teens. No teenager will buy that. Like, right? So we published the first Scratch book that sold, Super Scratch Programming Adventure. Horrible looking cover, but for an 8-year-old, it's cool. It's that horrible, like, kids. I just don't make kids books, but like Super Scratch. I think it's still the ugliest cover. No, they won't send me an email or something, but it is ugly. It's an ugly cover, but it worked for kids. What? It works for kids. It worked for kids, and Mitch Resnick's on the cover, and it's authentic. Like, authenticity is absolutely key too. Like, will this actually teach me something? Is this what I want? Does the author understand what I want? And so I mirror what you want, or try to, or people in this room. Like, what do people look for? Because I want people to walk into our booth when we sell at DEF CON, people literally walk down the table and they'll come to you with a stack of books. And I'm not kidding. It's like this. And you say, do you have any questions? No, just want to get these. Don't have these yet. Like, no one has this kind of, I mean, it's a crazy fan base. Read our Twitter feed. People posting pictures of stuff. Love No Starch. And they're just getting stuff that they don't have. And it's like, we give them 3 bags because they can't take them otherwise. And then I make whiskey glasses, and they get a whiskey glass if they're lucky. Yeah, you get one. You have them too. You collected them after, didn't you have like 6 of them one time? Okay. I left them after, yeah. Anyway, it's just fun. I have to think of the next fun thing to make. Oh, Barca, yeah, I want to do branded Glencairn glasses, but more common. It's just time. Wrap it up. Okay, sorry, Philip. Okay, so I can hang. If you have questions, you can ask. I mean, I don't know. I have to get out of the room. It's going to explode. Thank you.